Please be seated. This morning as I read the gospel, just as I got to the part about where the wind blew, the rain came down, just the ceiling, the sky just opened and it poured. And that door blew open. That was really spooky. I'm glad it didn't happen again. You and I have been together now about 10 months. During this time, you have heard me talk about various things. You've heard me identify some of the music that I like. You've heard me talk about some specific composers and artists. So you have some sense where musically, what I follow. I will tell you that it's really much broader than that. You'll hear about others as we go, but you'll have some sense of what sort of music that I follow. As someone asked me last night, they said, well, really, what do you follow? And I said, I like some of all, but all of none. And that pretty well summarizes it, but it doesn't get it down to the basics. I've talked with you bits and pieces about authors that I read. And there are others. There are novelists that I love to read. Many I have not read in a long time. Some I need to reread. But you have some sense of the writers that I follow. When I was in seminary, I decided I should adopt a theologian. They don't have much family, you know, and so I thought that they could join ours. So I adopted a particular theologian, and I began to read a good part of what he wrote, and it helped me organize my thinking along many lines, and later I began to adopt others because they just really don't have a lot of friends either. And so I have brought in various theologians, and you've heard me talk indirectly, perhaps even about those, so you have some sense of who I follow there. So here's your question for pondering today. Who do you follow? Who do you follow? Is there musically someone that you follow? Is there, if you had to choose only one person, one composer, one artist, or however you want to categorize that you followed because you couldn't have anyone else, who would that be? How about writers? Is there a particular writer who, if you could not read any book except that one writer's book, is there one writer that you would follow? Perhaps writing in a particular area, or a novelist, or whomever. I'm not going to ask you if you've adopted a theologian. Only those of us who are questionable do that. But maybe you've adopted a political leader. If you have, I would like to know. I haven't found one. But who do you follow? Who do you follow? Now let me ask you the following question. What drew you to this person? What is it about them that they hooked you? Was it the particular tunes that they use? Is it their wordsmanship, the ways in which they craft their writings? What drew you to them? These are actually questions that we consider when we talk about church growth. What drew people to us? How is it you came here? Those sorts of things. But these are also core questions, I think, for our lives. As I was reading to the gospel for today, I was struck, strangely enough, by the beginning of the gospel. There's so much in this gospel that it's really interesting. This is John's rendering of the feeding of the 5,000. It's the only miracle story that appears in all four gospels. And John doesn't call it a miracle, he calls it a sign. And he talks about the healings as being signs. So we start out the gospel today reading that these were people who were following Jesus. And John tells us why they're following Jesus. It's because they had seen these signs. That's what brought them to him. But that's just fascinating to me. Think about it. If they hadn't followed him, there wouldn't be this story. But there was something there that hooked them. There was something in those signs that they saw that drew them in. Maybe it was their own healing. Maybe it was something else. But they were there because they chose to follow Jesus. Who do you follow? Now, I'm going to tell you, if your immediate response to who do you follow is going to be Jesus or God, I'm going to ask you which one. Not which one, Jesus or God. I'm going to ask you which Jesus. Because on any particular day, you will get all sorts of images of Jesus. And they're not all the same. And the same thing with God. But the folks who came that day came because of the signs that they had seen. And they came, and what Jesus did was really remarkable. Because yet again, as he did a couple of weeks ago in Mark, out of his compassion, he looked at this group of people. And he said they're hungry. And how in the world are we going to feed them? How are we going to feed them? And one of the disciples says, well, there's this boy out there, and he's got a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. And Jesus says, get them. And what happened? What happened is really important. What happened is that Jesus fed them. And they didn't get all they need. They got all they wanted. They got more than what they needed. And there was enough left over for other folks. For other folks. What is your hunger? What is the deep hunger in your life? It may be a physical hunger. You may not have enough food. There are plenty of people who don't have enough food. There are more than enough people who don't have enough food. But for most of us, we're able to be fulfilled in that way, satisfied in that way. We have more than we need. We get what we want. But I'm willing to wager that deep within each of us is a hunger. What is yours? Do you hunger for companionship that may not be there in a way that you would like? Or perhaps you have the companionship, but you hunger for something deeper. Perhaps you have a deep need within yourself to be of use to others. Maybe there's a deep pain and you need healing or comfort. What is your hunger? You see, you and I gather as the 5,000 every time we gather. We gather as that group of people who follow Jesus because we have somehow seen the signs. And they have some sort of meaning for each of us. But beyond just the meaning, they touch us deeply. And you and I are called each day to open ourselves to the possibility that Jesus is here to feed us. And oh, what a feeding it is. It's like going to a church supper. I've never been to a church supper where we didn't have enough food. It might be all salads, but there were plenty of salads. Or it might be all desserts, but there were plenty of desserts. Who do you follow? What drew you to this person? And what is your deepest hunger? And how will they fill it? How will they fill it? You and I know, maybe not always up here, but in here, we know that yearning is for something deeper than we can provide ourselves. We know that what we encounter within ourselves is a hunger for God's love and God's presence in a way that we have never experienced before. Or maybe we just tasted it a little. But you and I hunger to be fed in such a way that we get more than we need and as much as we want. Who do you follow? Who feeds you? It is my prayer for all of us that as we open that hunger to God, we see the one who there with all that we need, all that we all need, who feeds us, who gives us strength, even as we follow him. And he loves us to the end.